And if we haven't met, welcome. I mean, if we've met, welcome. That felt rude. Welcome to all of you. Um, but if we haven't met, my name is Sarah, and I live in Oakland, California. And today's practice is going to be a yin practice as we're moving, at least here, it feels like we're already in spring, but we're moving out of winter into early spring, which is associated with the gallbladder liver meridians. And anatomically, that just means some inner thigh, outer hip, a little bit of back bending work. But energetically, it has to do with balancing our emotions, which I don't know about you, but my emotions feel more erratic than ever the last few years. So anything to help ground and center feels very welcoming. So that's my hope, is to create that space for you. And this is a donation class for Love Your Brain. If you haven't heard of them, I really encourage you to check them out. I'll put a link in at the end of the practice. I used to teach classes for them before the pandemic, and it's all rooted in community, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and really trying to build support for people that have been affected by brain injury. So if you have more questions on that, we can chat afterwards. Prop-wise, if you know me, you know that I can never say no to a blanket. I'm shocked that I only pulled out one. You really only need one, but more the better. I already put on my cozy wool socks, so you might grab things like that, warm socks, something for your eyes. It is a yin practice and very personal, but I like more props than less. So you might also grab things like cushions or bolsters, and you don't have to have yoga specific props. You can grab stuff off the couch. You can grab big towels out of the bathroom, pillows off the bed, whatever you have, we can make it work. All right, that was a lot of talking. We're going to get into child's pose. And I'm going to suggest a wider knee child's pose, since we are trying to target the inner thighs and groin. So that means if you want to pad up the knees with a blanket, or if you want to put a bolster under your chest or anything under your forehead. And then go ahead and settle in. Nothing to see here for the moment. And I'm actually going to stay upright so you can hear me a little more clearly. Okay, so with the yin style, we are looking to target connective tissue, which just surrounds everything. It makes us fluid and gliding and mobile human beings versus the 10-man. So that means the postures will probably feel very similar, but we approach them differently. So muscles like warm, dynamic movement. Connective tissue likes us to be still. So take the time now to get comfortable. All the postures are held for a couple minutes. 2 to 7 is average, but that doesn't mean you're stuck. I just really want you to trust yourself first. If you need to come out, you need to do something different, you have the space to do so. And then the last note I'm going to offer, once we settle into the shapes, I'm going to be quiet. I think we get enough information. We're constantly taking in podcasts, news, social media, emails. There's so many pings and dings that this is the space for you to just be quiet and still. So trust that I'm still here, in the digital connection. I'll let you know when it's time to come out. And just use the shapes to ground and land. You don't have to make anything happen. You're just opening up to space. Spending just about another minute in the shape. If you haven't done so already with the last minute here, you might just turn towards yourself with kind eyes and just get a sense of the residue from the day, maybe even the weekend. Anything you're bringing with you into the practice or anything that you need specifically from this time, what brought you here? Between each of the shapes this evening, you'll have a little bit of time for yourself to respond to the shape that just came before. So you might stay in child's pose a little bit longer. Your knees might be ready to come out. You might want to find some movement, or maybe there's just a place you want to rest and pause. And we'll take about 5, 10 breaths, and then we'll meet up together for the next shape. Feel free to linger as long as you want. You could also take a nap for the whole 45 minutes, and that would be fine. Yeah, I often do that. I get to yoga or I lay down on my mat and I realize how tired I am. So feel free, trust yourself first. If you want to move with me, we're going to move into a little bit of a back bend. We're going to move into Sphinx pose. And I really like, you can see I grabbed my bolster, but you could use a blanket and fold it up. I like placing something soft underneath the bottom ribs so that when you come down, you don't have to use your arms and your shoulders so much. So this is practice is really about getting quiet and still and less about work and more about affecting the nervous system. So I like to do everything I can, kind of princess in the pea, to make it as easy as possible. So you might try it if you haven't before. And it's just somewhere kind of between the navel and the bottom ribs. You want it beneath the breast line. So then the arms can be on the mat in front of it. And then the width of the legs is really dependent on how your low back feels. You might try a couple variations, couple widths. And then personally, I like to have something like a block or another cushion so I can drop my head and rest my forehead onto that firm support. Just helps relax the sides of the neck, help relax the jaw, especially if, like me, you're a jaw clencher or maybe you struggle with some TMJ. And then again, just settling in, whatever that means. That might include movement. You might just drop right into the shape. Feeling like you have to be completely relaxed. You just show up fully as you are. And hopefully, by starting with the body, just creating space, turning towards ourselves with some kindness, eventually the mind might follow. And again, I'm going to be quiet. I'll give you a little warning, just like I did in child's pose when we're getting close to the end. Otherwise, just in your own way, settling into this shape, into this body. right around that halfway marker. So you could stay in Sphinx pose. Feel free to change nothing. If you want a little bit more of a back bend, you could choose seal pose instead. So you lift yourself up, you take the hands a little wider. And I like to pivot the fingers out to the sides like flippers. That's where the name came from. And then you push down into the hands and extend the arms. And you can do that to any degree. You can walk the hands in closer to you and create a bigger back bend, more compression in the lower back. Might be a little bit of a dance between the two. You could spend a few breaths in seal and then come back down to Sphinx pose. And checking in with the jaw and the brow, softening something. Last few breaths. And then choosing for yourself once more if you want to stay in the shape a little longer. You want to come out and find a place to rest, a little mini shavasana, maybe some gentle therapeutic movement. Whatever you want or need in this moment, just tending to yourself for a few moments, few breaths. Okay. The next shape, I want to give you a few options because I believe hip openers are deeply personal. It's not a one size fits all with any shape, but for some reason with hip openers, it seems extra specialized. So you can choose from the pigeon buffet, any outer hip opener you want. You could choose pigeon, double pigeon, shoelace, figure four. You could sit with the shins crossed and fold forward. So any outer hip stretch that you want. And if you don't know what you want, then I would either suggest figure four, or my go to these days is sitting with the shins crossed. And you're crossing a little bit more at the mid shin. So it would almost look like if you're going to go into double pigeon, which just feels like a lot for my hips lately. So instead of stacking the shins, you just slide it in front. So different than having a very tight tucked ankle position and drawing things in close to you. You're a little bit further out. The feet are walking out towards their opposite knees. And I'm being very specific about that because I'm trying to get into a muscle called the piriformis. It's that deep hip rotator that you get when you do figure four or pigeon. Right? If that's too many options, then I suggest either this seated, and then you can build out similar to what you did for Sphinx. You can have something for the forehead. I like to make a little tabletop, so using the blocks and a bolster, but you could use a coffee table, you could use an ottoman, the edge of your couch, and you stack the arms and rest the head. It doesn't matter to me which leg you start with or which one's in front or which one's forward if you're doing pigeon, as long as you remember so you don't repeat it again the second side. And then I'll keep track of time, just allowing yourself make that gesture with the body instead of feeling like you have to go to the extreme, to the maximum edge. Just walking right up to sensation, making sure you can still breathe smoothly. Brain can relax. The body can let go into gravity. No need to hold yourself up or fight against that reality of gravity. Maybe feeling tired, fatigued, just leaning in. Deep breaths on this first side. you're ready, you'll tenderly release the shape. Make whatever transition you want over to that second side. And at this point, I find I start to get cool because I'm not really moving around. So if you have a blanket, I like to just throw it all the way over like a little cocoon. So if you're getting cool from being still, you might grab an extra layer and settle into that second side. Reminding yourself it doesn't matter how far you go, it doesn't matter what the shape looks like. But using that sensation around the hips to remind you to breathe. And then the breath is the real mechanism, the real tool that we're after that downshifts the nervous system. We have enough things in our lives that upregulate us, stimulate us. One of the best things we can do for our health is to have a relaxation practice. Even if you're feeling a little itchy or a little antsy, it's just not super familiar, to be still, trusting that it has great value and importance for your health. And can you choose to stay just this? Leaning into that sensation, slowing the breath down, choosing to focus on one thing only. Not rushing, coming out of the shape when your body feels ready. Just like you've been doing, taking a little bit of time for yourself, pause, to move, to respond in the way that feels most appropriate in the moment. We have one more shape to go before Shavasana. And we're going to go back to the inner thighs and do some kind of straddle shape. And I'll give you a few ways that you can set this up. So it doesn't have to be your widest for this straddle. You can have the legs closer together as long as you're feeling that inner thigh hamstring. I personally enjoy sitting on something for this shape. And so if you often use a blanket, but instead of sitting on the flat edge, actually sitting on the corner. So having the corner come forward. So the widest part of you is on the widest part of the blanket. It mirrors, kind of mimics the shape of the pelvis, which then helps the pelvis tip forward, which is how forward bends begin. So you could sit on 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 blankets, whatever you need. 10 might be too much, but you get the idea. And when I sit and I kind of wiggle forward, I can feel it shift the pelvis. So if you're stuck back here trying to forward bend, the most common thing is to boost yourself up because we want to create that tilt. And then again, you can use the ottoman, coffee table. You could build a structure if you have some yoga props around you so that when you come forward, there's something for the head to rest on. I also really like doing the shape at the wall. If you have something like a wall or a door close by, it won't require you moving all of your belongings with you. You could scoot close to the wall, lay back like you're going to do legs up the wall, but then open the legs out into a straddle. So that's a nice one if forward bending feels like too much pressure on the lower back. Or you could come onto your back with a strap around the feet, and then open the legs and just hold onto the strap that way. So a few options. Going for the targeted area of the inner thighs, but doesn't matter what it looks like. If you're in the seated variation, actually letting the spine round a little bit. So feel that tailbone drop like an anchor, almost like the back of the body is a sail. Just filling with breath, filling with air. And then you can relax the sides of the neck. You might even tuck the chin a little bit to keep that curve going all the way through the cervical spine. And hinging the jaw, softening the breath. Just deep breaths. Depending on where you are, if you're seated in forward bending, you'll lift the spine. If you're at the wall, you might gather the legs together. Same with the strap on the back. Right. For Shavasana, for the closing shape, I'm going to suggest a supported back bend using a blanket. Completely optional. You can do any pose that you want to close. Favorite resting pose. You can swing your legs up the wall or over the couch. But we've done a lot of forward bending. So going the opposite direction with the spine might feel good in the moment. So what you need is just something like this big blanket or a big towel folded in half. So you have a long rectangle-ish shape, And that's going to go vertically on your mat towards the back of the mat, whatever you're calling back of the mat or floor. And then legs, up to you. You could do soles of the feet together, knees open. And if that's the case, you might grab pillows off the couch or your blocks if you want to use them to support the outer thighs, outer shins. And we're sitting on the yoga mat. You're not sitting on the blanket, but you're nestled right up against it. So it's just at the edge of the sacrum so that when you lie back, it's a continuation of the spine. So it's going to create a little bit of a curve for the low back. And then I know I need extra support for the head when I come back. So what I like to do, if my blanket's long enough, is to take the tail end of the blanket and flip it over so I have a pillow. Or you could grab an extra pillow or extra blanket, especially if you feel like you need a little more support. And then cover yourself with a blanket or a couple blankets. If you have something for the eyes, warm socks. Taking the arms out a ways from the body so that the armpits have room. And it's not because we love the armpits necessarily, but the lungs have room to move out laterally. So if the arms are tucked in too close at the sides, one, it pops the shoulders up, and two, it inhibits the movement of the lungs. So sliding them out just enough that you feel the shoulders drop back. And then the breath can move freely. And then settling yourself into the last few quiet minutes of practice. Just feeling the support beneath you rise up to hold you. And feel your body giving into that support. Being soft in the body. Take a slow breath in. And a slow breath out. Welcoming a few more of these on your own. Slow breaths in. And slow breaths out. If you want more time to rest, I'm going to encourage you to stay where you are. I can handle signing you off. You don't have to worry about the tech side. If you just have the 45 minutes or the body feels ready, start out at the edges, the hands and the feet, and gradually bring a little life, a little movement back into your form. And if you're choosing movement, at some point you'll roll over to a side, take a couple breaths, cradle the head with an arm or a pillow. And without hurrying, finding your way up to a seat, we'll just take a final moment to close. And sit in any comfortable manner for you. And if you like some kind of gesture of kindness to end, it could be a hand on the heart, the palms in prayer, ground the hands in the lap. Maybe even bowing the head a little bit towards your heart. Just silently offering yourself a little thanks for getting here, carving out the time, marking this as important. Feeling any residue that might remain in the body and the nervous system. Closing with one last slow breath in. A generous breath out. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.